That would be breakfast. All right, so we got to talk about Intaglio. And we got a few things. I'm going to not only show you how to print, but I'm going to also, Kelly's going to show you how to print, and I'm also going to show you how to burnish and scrape a little bit. It won't be a long demo, but kind of give you an idea of some things to do. So some things you need. First of all the inks in the cabinets will still work for you. Just very important to remember, the inks in the cabinets are oil-based, so you need to use the vegetable oil or the Easy Wipe to add. Go for it. But over there in that cabinet, with the door left ajar intentionally, are these Aqua water-based Intaglio inks. And what's really cool about these inks is they wash up with soap and water. The manufacturer even recommends cleaning up with hand lotion. So like not even using soap and water, because in the winter when you're a printmaker, your hands get really chapped and dry from all the washing. And as Wendy pointed out, do yourself a flavor, and maybe when you get a can that's really dirty, just take 5 seconds to wash it with soap and water, tighten the lid so water doesn't get in here, wash it, and then that way it stays clean, because they do get a little bit dirty. The same sort of things we're going to need to use are ink knives, but I would now take the extra step to take some Windex or some soap and water and really make sure the knife is super duper clean. The reason being, just like lithography that we've kind of talked about, oil and water don't mix. So if you have oil-based ink on the knife and you introduce it to the water-based ink, you could have some discouraging problems. Got gloves because this is extremely messy. Cut up chipboard. So it's not corrugated cardboard. We have some here if for some reason you're here during the lab and you run out. It's not cardboard, mat board could work. Anything that's stiff but soft. So I wouldn't use plastic, I wouldn't use your credit card. I certainly wouldn't use a knife, but we're gonna use this chipboard to actually put the ink on the plates. So I would just, Gail and I will cut some up, but it's also maybe up to you if you will leave some pieces of cardboard out. You just go to the paper cutter, you carefully cut them into little bits, don't cut your fingers. Aqua ink, knives. The other thing we are going to need to start off with is underneath the press here are phone books and what's called tarlatan. And tarlatan is usually a starched cheesecloth, but now Aqua is making this polyester version that they claim is a lot better. So this is what we're going to use this quarter, and this does not get thrown away. So even though you'll never see it this clean again. The clean stuff will be under the press, and that where it says phone books. But the dirty stuff we want to keep because these become a tool to put ink into our plates. And so we're going to install a rack over there. We'll miss this part for the demo, but we'll just stick it in the rack like a chain link fence just so it can dry. And then when they're really thoroughly gross, we'll throw them away. But just keep in mind, whereas paper we throw away, we're going to want to keep these. So the other thing we have ready is our paper. And I took the time to soak it. I already made a bath, so I don't think you need me to show you how to do it, but if you do, we can work on that independently. But the plastic tubs are over there. We just fill it with water. Maybe you team up with someone, but keep in mind, maybe they have a reason why they don't want your paper in there, so ask first before you put your own paper in. And it's just water, there's nothing else in there, but we gotta talk about our cotton rag paper because there is a front and a back. And the easy way to tell is if you see the watermark that might say Reeves BFK or Folio, if you can read it, that's the front. But if you tear it down, you gotta look real close, and there's usually going to be a texture that looks very uniform and machined, and that's the actual screen that makes the paper. And the more organic side is the front. Does it matter? Not necessarily, but it's nice to know. And so what I always do is I sort of look and I determine if I can't see the watermark, which side I think is the back. And with a pencil, I initial a corner of it. And then that way I know that's the back, and I know it's my paper. And so it's been soaking for a minimum of 20 minutes. Some people have gotten away with 10 and 15 minutes, but we really want this paper to soak all the way through. And this is all your cotton rag paper. It can't hurt it to over soak it. It won't deteriorate. But what can happen is the glue will leach out into the water, and if you leave it overnight, besides the fact a facilities person might empty the bath or something and you might lose your paper, because glue sometimes has a sweetness to it, it might attract bugs or it might attract mold. And so if you're done printing and you have some of this expensive paper, I suggest taking it out, blotting each piece, and then putting it in your drawer, putting it in a drying rack to dry. That won't mold. But for instance, there's a piece over there that I think maybe Jason left. I don't know who left or whose it is, but it's got a little mold in it. Don't think it's yours? Okay. So, what questions do you have so far? One question, or I can't put my gloves on. I physically can't.
What is that thing called again? That jar thing.
This?
This other one.
Stop out.
Stop that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll label it. It's
Okay.
just basically a different type of ground, but this isn't what you would coat your whole plate with to etch
Mhm.
with. This is just for
Okay.
tiny areas to mask. How cool is what going to look?
Final product.
I think it's going to look pretty cool. So,
Excited to see it.
that's good.
Do you think you could wash the Akua rags, Tarleton, off if you're using Akua inks on them? Because they say it's polyester and the inks are water-based.
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know that it's worth the time. It's not the most expensive stuff. Now, that brings up an interesting point. The cool thing about Akua inks, besides the fact that they're low toxicity and they're water-based and they clean up so easily, is that they actually dry by the water being wicked out of the ink into your paper. So your paper actually dries the ink. So it should, in theory, stay wet on the slab indefinitely. Whereas even the oil-based inks can dry if you left them for several days, which we never would. By the way, side note, you've all been doing like better than any printmaking class I've ever taught as far as cleanup goes. Can I just?
Yay.
Do you agree? Those people who've been here before, like
Yeah.
really rocking. So here's something. One of the reasons why we really clean the knife is because these inks do sometimes settle, and so you might have to stir them up, whereas you don't have to do that with the oil-based, right? And so, again, we don't want to introduce any weird colors or contamination. Like if this was a white can of ink and you'd have black ink in there, you're going to be sad. Sad panda. So take a little out. Now the cool thing is with this too, you don't have to worry about stabbing the inks. Like with the oil-based inks, we didn't want to scoop like a melon scoop. We wanted to frost like a cake. Here you can just kind of stab because then it'll all just settle. And that's probably too much for today. You can always add more. Now, if you do mix colors, and mixing I highly recommend, we have a bunch of colors over there, then plan on trying to keep it and not throwing it away. And that's why we'll use things like hummus containers or yogurt containers or even foil, because we don't want to throw these away. These are fairly pricey inks. All right. So the other cool thing is with the Akua water-based ink is it's ready to go. No additives. You could use the etching ink, you could use the relief ink, but you're going to add Easy Wipe and Setswell like you did with your mono type. So we're ready to go. So, and I think, Kelly, you're going to do this with me.
Okay.
So maybe come on around, and I'm going to show plastic, and Kelly's going to show zinc. And even though, let's just pretend you soap and watered it, because,
Okay.
yeah. All right, a card, cardboard card, and ink. Now, can anybody guess one slight problem or discomfort that might come from inking in clear plate?
It never comes clean again. It's a stain.
Good guess, good guess. Close, warm, but not
Maybe it
hot.
smears a lot. Or...
Good, getting warmer. You can see through it. So if you get ink on the back,
Wow.
you
Where
gotta.
is it?
So you gotta kind of think about that a little bit, because you might be wiping forever, like, oh, this spot just won't come clean. Well, maybe it's on the back, right? So it's going to be a little messier looking than the metal. So card only, no metal. Someone here, and I'm not looking at anybody, but someone will take the ink and start doing this, right? And you all gasped,
Yeah.
because the Rockwell hardness of steel is a lot harder than plastic or zinc, and so you'll scratch it right away.
Yeah.
So we're setting the, I might even, if you're really worried about it, because you're tempted, you're like, oh, I love this tool. I just clean it off and put it away. So I'm going to take a little bit. Go ahead and grab some, Kelly. And I'm going to card it and be pretty generous. And I'm carding, of course, the front of the plate. And I know that because I can hear it scratching on the
Is this
marks.
going right onto the bear or?
Right onto the bear.
Okay.
So and some people come up with different ways to do this. For the first part, it doesn't even matter just like with relief, we're not gonna print on super good paper for the first proof. We're either gonna use the printer paper, or if your plate's too big, we're gonna use newsprint. And I'm using good paper today just because I had some already cut up and they were little scrap pieces. But you want to cover it, and you'll kind of come up to your own sort of shortcuts when you do this. But you want to cover the whole thing, and then you want to use the clean side of the board to take off, just sort of scraping the top. And you can see this is going to be really messy. So printing with a buddy, or having a lot of disposable gloves, or washing your hands a lot, because not just your prints,